introduction, just a few words.
We will hear about them later. But before I start, I'd like to introduce my co-founder or the CEO of Society 3, Axel. Thank you for helping me today with the presenter. Yeah, so why don't we just start with Guillaume. Guillaume, thank you so much for joining us. Guillaume is a multi-time entrepreneur, and I learned when he is not working for Scoop.IT, he is skiing, and the other thing is he's a gamer, online gamer. Guillaume, thank you so much, and you will tell us a little bit how you came here, what is the difference between Silicon Valley and running 3 startups here in the US. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to run it from here. All right, good evening everyone. I'm super excited to be here. So how many of you, I'm going to share my story as an entrepreneur, hopefully try to make it interesting and share some lessons learned. I want to get a sense, like, how many of you are entrepreneurs? All of you? And are there people in the room thinking about starting their company and not an entrepreneur yet? Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to share my story and try to come up with some lessons. I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years now. And so maybe, and hopefully we'll have time for Q&A after that, or, you know, come find me anytime. So, I titled this presentation From Silicon Valley to Europe in 3 startups. I'm French. I've been starting my first company in Europe and then came back here. I'm going to tell you about that. And so I'd like to start the story by talking about what happened to me 20 years ago. So I grew up in France. I did engineering school in France, and I had the American dream like many Europeans have, and many people in the world have. And I was lucky enough to do grad school here. I was admitted to Stanford. And being French in '94, this is what I expected. I thought Stanford was in California. California to me was sunshine, very warm weather, people spending their time on the beach. Is there a way to fix that? Okay, I'm gonna try to stop moving. So that's what I expected, and of course, for those of you who've been to Stanford, this is actually very different. This is more like what it looked like, but it was actually better in a number of ways, because I was surrounded by people who wanted to start their company, and I think, you know, there's no greater motivation. And you know, being French 20 years ago, or I would say it's true for a lot of European countries, and maybe it's true for a lot of you who relocated here because you wanted to be an entrepreneur, I actually thought it was not possible. I thought this was, you know, very risky to be an entrepreneur. You know, I had this image that, you know, being an entrepreneur, starting a company was a bit like playing the lottery, but if you didn't win, you lost your house, you ended up homeless in the street. And I was surrounded by a lot of people who wanted to do that, so, you know, gave me a lot more confidence. And the teachers and the people who spoke at Stanford in the classes all had something in common, was that they not only did it, but they failed at doing it. And that's something that, you know, made me confident that I could become an entrepreneur one day. And so in '95, I had this big question, you know, do I want to stay in that, you know, computer classroom, or do you want to go back to Paris? And, you know, back then, you know, all of the tech was in South Bay and in Palo Alto. There was no tech in San Francisco. So I decided to go back to Paris to work in the mobile industry, which was really booming back then. But I had a, you know, I had a little seed in, you know, in me, and I kept hearing the music about, you know, becoming an entrepreneur. And it took me actually 5 years to start realizing that, you know, an idea that I had around music, around what internet made possible for music, could actually be something I could be involved with and start a company with. And so that company was called MusiWave. It was the first mobile music platform. We started it back in 2000, you know, way before, you know, the iPhone. And it was really interesting and challenging at first. Because of a number of reasons. We launched at possibly the worst time ever. We launched in between the first internet bubble explosion and 9/11. I remember we started, we had our pitch deck finalized in August 2001. And we started sending it and pitching some VCs a month before 9/11. At that time, for those of you who remember, our idea needed 3G. Our idea needed 3G, and everyone was thinking 3G is coming in 6 months. And so we felt, oh, that's a great timing. Technology is going to come. That's going to make our dream possible. Now, well, the thing is that 3G only arrived 3 years later, and we were in France. And back then in France, it was really, the startup environment has changed a lot since then. But back then, it wasn't really great. So this is what the VCs we pitched to said, there's no way you can be successful. And so we had a really tough time raising money, and actually for a long time we didn't, which made us do one thing. When you can't get money from investors, you take it from the only possible source you have, which is your customers. And that actually did us a lot of good, because I think we didn't have the maturity. We would have burned a lot of that cash. We were much younger. And by forcing us to focus on our customers' needs, we learned a lot of things. And one of the things we learned is that in our model, we were in between record labels and mobile carriers. So we were between big companies and very big companies. And so the only reason we could exist was through innovations. And so our company invented a number of things that are taken for granted now, but we were the first to do MP3 ringtones. We were the first to do full track music downloads. We invented a product called Smart Radio, which was actually even before Pandora, or back in the same time. And so, that forced us, that inability to raise money actually brought a lot of good things. And I'm going to talk about that in the lessons learned after that. Unexpectedly, success happened. Because we were so focused on innovation, by constantly iterating on products, we ended up having a hit, and then a second hit, and then we started, in no time, we scaled to a $35 million business, we ended up raising money, and then realizing 3 months down the road that we were profitable, so, not needing really the money, but that's a good problem to have. And we got acquired, so, great success story. The company is, the brand was never famous, but it became the music platform of Microsoft. Nobody knows, but Microsoft has a music platform. It didn't entirely fail with Zune, and after failing with Zune, they acquired Microsoft, they acquired MusiWave, and if you download music from an Xbox, that's from the platform we created. So that was the first story, and after that, I think like many entrepreneurs, you want to know whether you can do it again. Was that just luck? Or, can I do it again? And so we came up with an idea, and I met my co-founder, Mark, back in the days through some of our VCs, and we were in the mobile space back then. It was 2007, and we had a great idea for mobile internet. That was back in 2007. I had been in the mobile industry my whole career, and we felt something was missing. We felt the carriers were controlling all of the mobile internet. That's not the way the internet works. That should be open. People should be able to choose their own services. And so we had this great idea called the apps. And we launched Goodjet, which is the short for good widgets. So we didn't call them apps, but widgets. But it was pretty much this idea that you could access the internet with little icons that you could customize and choose the services you want. Does it sound familiar? Well, it is, because we had a big problem 6 months down the road, which is we had another guy who's had the same idea, only a little better in terms of execution. And not only did Apple do that, but then Google came and launched Android, so we were fucked. And we did a big mistake then. What we should have done was really simple. We should say, okay, that's not going to work. Let's either shut down the company or do something totally different. But we didn't do that. Maybe because we were proud, maybe because we didn't think through everything, but we thought we could save the product by adding more features. So we said, hey, look, Apple might have an app store, but we have a widget platform, and we also have an RSS reader in there, and we have a social news reader, and we have a messaging application. You know, you might wonder why you would put all of that, because it's like, you know, hey, we might have an espresso machine in there. And, you know, of course, if you do all the things, it's clunky, and people don't understand what you're doing, and, you know, we failed. And that's, you know, when we were pitching, that's the reaction we got. But we do everything. Well, when you do everything you don't do anything right. And so we failed getting distribution, stickiness, we couldn't build a business model, and we had no value proposition. We're trying to do too many things. So we thought a lot about, you know, we got back to the real question. Should we shut down the company, or should we pivot and do something else? And I think all entrepreneurs will face that choice at some point. I was lucky in the first, I had beginner's luck in the first one. We didn't have to pivot with MusiWave. We did a lot of product iterations, and we built some products, but our positioning was always the same. We were a mobile music platform. We didn't know what mobile music was, but we knew we wanted to do mobile music services. And we took a lot of time thinking about, should we shut down the company, give the money back, start something different, or, you know, should we pivot and do something different? And so we went through a lot of things, and at the end of the day, what's really got us in the decision of pivoting and do something with the same company was that we had a great team. And, you know, to me, that's the only thing that matters. At the end of the day, you know, when I have a big decision to take in my life, I try to put myself, you know, on the other side of the decision. What will I do if I shut down the company? And I was like, I'd love to start a company with Mark again. And, you know, of course it's going to be tech, so we're going to have to recruit an engineering team. Well, we would recruit the same guys that are working with us right now. And who would we raise money from? Well, we would raise money from the same VC. So at the end of the day, it was, you know, building the same thing, and so we felt we could work on something. But that was not enough. Of course, you need to come back to come up with an idea and a new product and a new strategy and everything. And so, to me, a way to actually find new ideas and understand new problems is to, often in my life, I've tried to change location and change perspective. And so I relocated to San Francisco. That was back 4 years ago now. And I started to, you know, learn a lot of things. I went to meetups just like this, you know, talk to people, hear what people were saying, talk about, you know, what people's problems were. And it did a lot of good, and we ended up identifying a problem. People were starting to talk about what Web 2.0 had created, and they called it different names, but the name that stuck is information overload. You know, the web had become that big crowd where everybody talks at the same time, because we have tools, we have social networks, we have blogging platforms, we have Instagram, we have all of those things, so we can all share content and publish content, and so everybody does. And it causes problems. People don't know who to listen to, and people don't know how to be heard. If you try to talk in a noisy environment, it's hard to be heard. And so we decided to focus not on those two problems, but on one of those problems. And at some point, we almost made the mistake of trying to solve both at the same time, but we decided to say, okay, let's focus on just one problem. Let's not do the mistake again of trying to be an espresso machine and a widget platform and whatever. And so we felt the problem could be expressed this way. You know, Web 2.0 means everyone can be a publisher, and so it puts a lot of pressure on people to be publishers. And especially true for professionals. If you don't publish content, you're not doing your job on LinkedIn. You're missing out on the Twitter opportunity. You can have thousands of followers. You could make your company famous by having a great blog. You could have VCs notice you, or partners or clients. So we all feel that pressure of, you know, we are the content we publish, but we're not doing our job because we're not publishing, because it's hard. And the problem that people were telling us, even the people who had, you know, hundreds of followers on Twitter, they were saying, I don't have time for this. I don't have time to run a company or to do my day job and publish all the content I need. And so we said, okay, the solution to that can be developed. It's called content curation and we're going to build it. We're going to build a technology, and we're going to build a platform that helps people with that. And I don't want to go too much into detail. If you have questions, happy to talk about that. But that's, we became Scoop.IT. Scoop.IT is a content creation platform. It's got a great technology to help you discover great content on your topics of interest, so what you want to be known for. And then lets you enrich that with your own commentary, link to it, and then publish it to your social networks, your blogs, your website, your newsletters. So making it super easy for you to become a publisher by linking back to other people's content. So that's what we launched. We launched that now 2.5 years ago. And it's been amazing, and I'm not putting those figures to brag, but it's been amazing to see how quickly we had feedback from the market. And so this is a big lesson for me, is like pretty much over the last 15 years, it didn't take 3 months to understand whether a product was failing or succeeding. It took 3 days, 3 weeks at most, but when you have something and you're like, oh, maybe if we did that it would work, or maybe if we just change this, and if you start looking at the metrics on a product, there's always a way to find one metric that does well. But the reality is, when you have something that works, you have a curve like this, and you know it instantly, or almost. And so the product market fit is not, something that should be crystal clear. And a lot of times when people tell me, hey, we have a product, it's doing, we think it's doing well, but it's not totally there. We should raise more money, and then, we're going to be able to fix that and that. I'm like, no, it's not going to work, because, you don't need money to have a curve like this. You need money to keep going a curve like this, but the beginning of the curve, you should see that instantly. What takes some time to build, and, it took us 2 years. For 2 years, we didn't have revenue. What takes some time to build is the business model around it, and that's okay. We discovered we could live for 2 years without working on a business model, just working on growth. But now we found a business model, so there's a premium version of Scoop.IT. Again, happy to talk about it if you want some details, but business models can wait. The product market fit, that doesn't wait. So I want to talk about, so this is my story, and that's where we are, and maybe Scoop.IT will go bust, and we're going to have problems in the future, right? So I don't know if it's going to be successful, but I had one successful startup, one failed startup, and even if the Scoop.IT is a pivot of the other one, to me it's a third company. That's also something important. When you pivot, try to act as if your company dies and start again, because that's very important. And so the third one is in the making, so we'll see. So I want to share with you some lessons, and hopefully they can be useful for you guys. But those are things I wish I knew back 15 years ago, or probably 5 years ago as well. So first of all, you've seen that before, but success is not what it looks like. And I know in Silicon Valley we like to, it's almost like a show where you have those successful entrepreneurs which are highlighted, and they're successful and everything, and that's great, and I admire them, and we it's great that we have that culture. But most of the time, and this is very important to understand, you're going to be going through iterations and failures. So this means, to me, what being an entrepreneur means is being in a roller coaster. You're going to have some ups and downs, and some of you, probably experience that every day. And what I tell people is that sometimes it's fun, and for other people it's not. So that's one of the things I learned, is you have to be. This is more for people who are thinking about becoming entrepreneurs, and like, what's it like? That's the best analogy I found. It's, do you like going up and down, or do you have if you want a smooth ride, that's not one. What I found as well is that. And this is true in your career, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. I think this is true in our world, but specifically if you're an entrepreneur, sometimes the biggest risk is not to take aim. When we had our product, our widget platform, and we thought, we have a problem, what seemed to us like a huge risk was shut down and start again. And the reason was that we had users. It was not like we launched a product and it failed in 2 days. That's an easy problem to have. You have a problem, you have 0 users in 2 months, you don't have, that's easy. But we had 1 million downloads. 1 million downloads, is it bad, is it good? We don't know. And the risk we didn't want to take was to actually shut down some features and cut down on the features of the product. And a lot of time in the product discussions, you're like, oh my God, we have this feature, it's kind of work, should we take it out? Or should we add more? And you want to take those risks because at some point, not taking any risks is the biggest risk of all. The other thing we learn, and this is something that, this is a great movie by the way, it's just being out, I don't want to spoil it, but it's just a lifetime repeat that I like. But we spent a lot of time so MusicWave was B2B, and so we built a platform and we didn't have to worry so much on like what the consumer experience was for a number of reasons. Don't want to go too much into details, but Guillaume was a B2C product. And so a lot of things that happen when you do a B2C product is like, is this feature going to be good? Is this UX going to be good? And sometimes, and I don't know if you went into that, you have a lot of preconceived notions. Oh, I want the button to be orange because I read a great blog post saying orange buttons are better than green buttons. And what we realized is that at Guillaume we were spending a lot of time debating things like that. UX problems, feature problems, prioritization problems. And a lot of times we were going into very long discussions and it slowed down our product process. And when we discovered the lean startup things and everything and we started to experiment, we got way faster. So, a lot of the times, and this is true for product, this is true for business models, this is true for partnerships, it's better to say, well, let's experiment. Let's do the first step and let's see whether we get something out of this, rather than overthink and say, oh, how can I project? How can I think? The other thing, and now you're going to think I don't like ideas, which it's not true. I love ideas, but I've learned to be suspicious of ideas. Is that teams are stronger than ideas. I don't know how Scoop.IT is going to end, but I know I'm having fun and that we're doing something great that's useful to people. And we're doing that with the same team. So, if we had been motivated, just like if we had come across just on one idea, we couldn't have done this pivot. So, what I see to a lot of entrepreneurs who are thinking about starting their companies is don't pay too much attention to the idea, or don't lock yourself into an idea because the idea might change. It's more important to spend time defining who your co-founders are going to be, what's your team going to be like. So those are very generic things, but I want to go maybe a little more onto trying to provide you tools with that I've learned, and maybe this is going to look very simple to you, but I think we failed at Guillaume because we didn't define our opportunity precisely. And there's a number of questions on that slide which are super important. Understanding what problem exactly do you solve, who do you solve it for, and why you're the best one in the world to solve it. Those are fundamental questions that if you don't have very clear answers to that, and by the way, it's very easy to fabricate fake answers to those questions. So, that's what advisors are for, and you should run them to a lot of people who are not you, who are not biased, who are not involved. As long as you don't have that, you don't have an opportunity. And there are things which are subtle, which is like the problem you're trying to solve. Is it just an irritation? Meaning, people can, they are annoyed by that, but they cope with it. Or is that an impossibility? On MusicWave, you couldn't download MP3 ringtones before we created that. Of course, there are other companies who were that, but there was a before and after. So if you were a kid, if you were a teenager back in 2003 and you wanted to have 30 seconds of your favorite singer on your phone, you couldn't. And because of our product, now you could. So that's an impossibility. That's way different than an irritation. And the amount of the quality of your solution, like how great your solution is, depends on like what's the problem you solve. If you solve an irritation, you got to make a product that's really much better. So those are the things I like to share because I think it's super important to think about this. And you think about also who has that problem, and if you find great, there are lots of people who have that problem, you have no way to reach them. You don't have a distribution model. So the other thing which, for me are really important, and a lot of startups are, thinking their product will answer that, and to me it's totally wrong, is what's your growth model? You might have the best product in the world. You might have solved a very beautiful problem and have lots of people potentially have that. But if you don't have growth model, it's not going to work. And by growth model, I mean something you can repeat that's going to help you grow the company. So I'm going to give you 2 examples that I know because they're my companies, and just to get an idea of what I mean by that. MusiWave scaled because as a B2B company, that's what I call a revenue first model. We won the first customer, meaning we spent resources pitching them, selling to them, doing pre-sales work. When we win them, we get revenue. With that revenue, we can, we have a reference, we have experience, and we have revenue. We have the 3 things. All of the things help us through maybe doing PR, through adding resources, recruiting more salespeople. That helps us get the next customer. And the money from the next customer can help us grow. And so that's one model. And revenue creates distribution. On Scoop.IT, we have a totally different model. I told you for 2 years we didn't focus on the business model, we didn't have revenue, but we had a growth model which was interesting, which is that as people sign up to use the service, they became active, they published content. That content was linking back to their Scoop.IT pages, and so they were bringing new visitors to Scoop.IT who said, oh, I have this problem too, that guy is doing that great topic page on Scoop.IT with lots of great content, I want to sign up again. And so we had a loop like this. So it's a distribution first model where distribution is organic, there's 0 cost to it, and we convert some of the users to premium. Very different growth model. But the key is understanding what are the things. And this is not marketing, by the way. Like people who say, oh, my growth model is I got the best influencers in the world and they're going to blog about my product. This is a launch strategy, and you need one, but that's not a growth model. A growth model is like if you did 0 marketing, would your product still grow? So that's about what I wanted to share, and so I don't know if we have time for questions, but thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Any questions from you guys? Come on. All successful entrepreneurs don't have George.
No, I was going to say,
thank you very much for this and everything like that. Is the presentation going to be available to everyone here tonight and everything if they want to get out of it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's important. And I wanted to thank you for a couple of the slides in particular. The growth slides were very, very illuminating, and then the opportunity to basically dissect what problems you're going to be coming in and what you're going to be going through as an entrepreneur. And just want to wish you all the luck in the world and Scoop.IT, okay?
Thanks, George. There's another question here.
If you were doing this presentation a year or 2, what would you be saying you didn't say tonight?
It's easy for me to say because I've done it before. So,
If I had done it 2 years ago?
No, 2 years from now, you're doing a presentation. What will you be telling us?
2 years from now? Oh, okay, so I haven't done that. I haven't traveled to the future to give that talk yet. Okay. So first answer is I don't know what I don't know. And I think, one of the reasons I'm an entrepreneur and I went back to start a new company is, and this is something I discovered, is that there are lots of professions where you capitalize on what you've done. I have a lot of bankers friends, and they've been bankers for 20 years or 15 years, and they are just leveraging what they've done, and they're building on their network, they're building on their clients. When you're an entrepreneur, you don't do that. I mean, yes, you build on your network, but you're kind of betting again. And I think my story is a good example of that. I've been successful once doesn't mean I've been successful the second time. So the thing is that I like that. So to answer your question by a non-answer is I'm sure that within the next 2 years I'm going to learn a lot of things and I'm gonna come back and tell you, by the way, what I told you there, you know, it didn't work out, or you know, and I've learned a few new things. And you know, frankly, that's why I like being an entrepreneur. Is you constantly learn. So hard to answer your question. That's very rhetorical, but.
Okay, any more questions? And here we go, last one.
Yeah, when you said you pivoted a couple times, how did you talk about it to your consumers or to your investors or to your friends and family?
So,
So the question was like, how did we communicate on when we pivoted? So consumers was easy. We shut down the product. So you know that's easy. We told them, look, we're just going to shut down the product. And you know, some people were crying. And that's one of the things, by the way. You can make the worst product in the world. You will always find some people out there who will love it. So that doesn't mean anything. You know, we had people crying and said, you know, they even created a Facebook group called the Budget Angels because they felt we killed them, and so they became angels. Strange. I love those people, by the way. They're great people, but you know, just having fans doesn't count. So we just told them, look, we're going to shut down the service. It didn't work. We're sorry. We said it nicely, but you know, the discussion with the investors was. So I got to tell you how I feel about my investors, and I touched a bit on that. But when I talked about we had a team, I include my investors in that. And I see a lot of people, and there's a lot of like, I know reporters like to oppose entrepreneurs and VCs. That's not the way I see it. If you look at what VCs are not, you know, rich people who write you a check from their own money. VCs are people who are entrepreneurs like you. They're trying to raise money, especially in Europe, and especially in tier 2 and tier 3 funds where it's a lot harder. And they're taking risks, and so I see them as members of my team. And so that process of going through a pivot was something we did collectively, and we disagree. You know, when you have more than one people in a decision, you always have disagreements, right? And so, you know, we went through a lot of this process, but you know, what are the alternatives? And at the end of the day, like I said, if I was going to shut down the company, liquidate the company, and I would still be an entrepreneur. That was clear to me, and I would want to work with the same people. So that's what I told them. I told them, look, we can give you the money back, but we can start again, and you know, we have this opportunity. We're starting to understand. So that was a very complex iterative process, but that was a very transparent process.